Welcome everyone to Karazhan. Today I'm taking a look at the hidden optional boss inside Karazhan, Nightbane. Nightbane drops the new mount, the Smoldering Ember Wyrm, so if you're interested in getting that, then you'll need to know exactly how to spawn him, and how to defeat him, as he's a reasonably challenging boss by himself. So the objective of this is to beat the Opera event and get to the first of the soul fragments within 8 minutes. So at the start we just have our Death Knight mind controlling the Shrieking Terror so we can bypass that. It saves a good amount of time as they have reasonably high HP, and he just gets a little bit more DPS from the Terror, although it doesn't do a great deal. Onwards to this area full of ghosts, and I just pull this entire corridor. It's 3 packs. They don't do very much. The Philanthropists are the ones you have to watch out for. They have an ability called Pennies from Heaven, which puts lots of little circles on the ground, which do massive damage, about 500k per penny. So our DK here is Frost using his AoE stun just to lock them all down. And we have pretty good AoE damage because of the Fire Mage and the Ellie Shaman. So they quickly dispatch of those, although if you can't really stun them for long duration, the pennies will probably wreck you. We do the same thing again here, just pulling all of these groups. And I've just got the talent that slows stuff down with Consecration, so stuff that's behind me gets a bit slowed down as I spam Consecration, which makes it much more safe for me to keep pulling. So we just rush through all of these, and we're aiming to take these into the room for Opera. And once we're in there, we can start the RP. You don't want to have to spend too much time waiting on the RP, so we just run past these guys and deal with them as the RP is going on. So once the RP is done, you have to deal with whichever Opera boss comes out. I won't go into very much detail because this isn't meant to be a Karazhan guide, so yeah, deal with the Opera boss and then you have to move on. So in the next section there are a bunch more ghosts, these Phantom crew members and the performers. Generally they're not very dangerous, you can usually just pull a lot of them. They do drop sort of spotlights on themselves. If you move them out of the spotlight and have your party member stand in it instead, you can get a damage buff. Helps you make a timer a little bit more easily. Generally they're pretty non-threatening however, so we just pulled all the way up to this room here and AoE did all these down. The next room however is a little bit more dangerous. These guys have a stun that they put on the tank and they deal pretty heavy damage. Despite that I pull all the groups and I just pop my Guardian of Ancient Kings to mitigate the damage. I know that the AoE damage in my group is going to be pretty good and they'll be able to handle it before my cooldowns expire. We have the AoE stun from the DK and I can do a little bit of kiting, so overall it's pretty okay. The only noteworthy enemy in the next section are these skeletal ushers. They have a cast called Flashlight, so you want to face away when they do that or they'll disorient you. And this can be bad because it'll drop aggro when you get disoriented. Otherwise, the rest of the Spectral Patrons aren't very dangerous, just AoE them down. So once these are dealt with, you can click this purple crystal here, and if you're within 8 minutes, when you click it you'll get a buff on yourself which lasts, I believe, about 6 minutes. So the objective is to get to the next crystal in the duration of this buff. The next crystal will add some time to this buff, so the faster you go in every section, the more your buff will stack up. So generally don't slow down at any point and just keep on going. Through the guest chambers here, you want to be careful not to pull too much. They're not particularly dangerous, but they apply a stacking debuff to you. And whilst we never hit 100 stacks, I'm kind of led to believe that you get mind controlled on 100 perhaps. So if you pull a lot of these at once, they'll stack the debuff up really fast and it's going to be bad news. So just play it a little bit safe. Obviously big pulls are still good, but don't overdo it and give time for the debuff to drop between each pull. In the final guest chamber on the left, before you reach the Maiden of Virtue, you'll find the second crystal here. You see at this point we have around 2 to 3 minutes left, which is a pretty good amount. We certainly could have been faster, but it's a sufficient amount of time. So we click on that crystal and we get some time added to our buff. The next crystal we went for is the one behind Morose here, and you see we had a little bit of miscommunication. The CC got a little bit messed up, so we ended up pulling all the dinner guests and Morose at the same time, which is obviously really bad news. However, we kind of vastly overgeared this and we had pretty good AoE composition, so it ended up working out even with a dead healer. I don't recommend doing it this way. I suggest you get the ghost traps and you trap stuff, because I think we got pretty lucky that this even worked at all. So yeah, don't repeat this, it's pretty bad news overall. The next crystal is down in this section with all the little spiders. Despite their size, these guys are very, very dangerous. The web spray ability hits for over 1,000,000 damage each hit. So don't go overboard and pull too many, and if you do pull lots, be ready to communicate with your healer, get lots of cooldowns on you. I was calling for Cocoon from our monk, I was using my own stuff as well. Because multiple web hits at the same time will just outright kill you, and if anyone else is in front of the enemies as well, they'll also be killed. So yeah, you really got to watch out here, as pulling too many of these is just bad news. So the next crystal is in between all these webs, and you just channel in this, and then afterwards you can take the portal which leads back to the entrance. Unfortunately we were stuck in combat, so we just opted to die. Fortunately, if you die you don't lose your buff, so if you do end up with a combat bug like we did, you can safely just die and respawn further back. So the next crystal is quite a trek all the way up to the curator, and depending on your time you might want to ignore the final pack of trash in this room. We had a lot of spare time, so we just figured we would kill it just to play it completely safe. However, if you're down to say 3 minutes perhaps, then you might want to look into ignoring it and just kind of staying away from that side of the room where possible. However, if you've been nice with your time and you've kept up the speed, then you should be okay. You'll notice at this point as well we're actually killing the Forlorn Spirit our Death Knight had mind controlled, as on our previous attempt he had died during Curator and the Spirit got loose, and the Spirit was pretty bad news combined with the Curator abilities, so just an extra insurance policy there, we were making sure that Spirit was dealt with before we started the boss. So once you've dealt with Curator, the crystal will spawn underneath his corpse, make sure not to miss it. And when you channel on this final one, you'll get a new buff, and this buff is 5-minute duration. You have to get back down to Nightbane's platform, and you have to talk to a spirit there within 5 minutes. When you talk to this spirit, there's a bit of a RP. It sort of reveals the origins of Nightbane from the Blue Dragon Arcanagos, and after this RP is done, he immediately lands on the platform, so if you don't want to pull him, you have to get out of the way. So, if you thought the speedrun was tough, then you're in for a shock here, as Nightbane is actually a very, very difficult 5-man boss. So I'm going to go over the full tactics for this guy and how you should handle it. In our experience, the best method was not to blow cooldowns at the start. You can see I do use my Avenging Wrath, but only because it refreshes itself in time for the second phase. So in this phase, Nightbane attacks your tank with Cinder Breath. It's relatively high damage, however you just have to heal through it and make sure no one else is in front of the boss. He also does a tail swipe, so don't get behind him either. He's going to apply Ignite Soul to one of your party members at random, and Ignite Soul is a kind of unusual debuff. The way it works is at the end of the duration, you will deal your remaining health as damage to everyone else. So what you want to do when you get Ignite Soul is stand in the fire patches on the ground and take some damage, get yourself down low HP, so that when you explode you're dealing much less damage to everyone else. These fire patches I talked about, as you see, they're just thrown out at random. They'll land on top of a party member and they'll just persist there permanently, we believe. So we were just starting on the edge here and making our way around slowly. I kept the head facing off the edge of the balcony so people had room to stand at his side safely. The other debuff he applies is sort of this magic dot, and every time you dispel, it's going to spawn one of these Restless Bones. The Restless Bones themselves don't have very much HP and aren't very dangerous. However, when they die, they apply a 25% damage taken increase to everyone nearby. So if you can handle the healing, you don't want to dispel this dot, as the damage taken increase is pretty bad for the tank, as Nightbane already hits fairly hard. Now we opted to use cooldowns and heroism in phase 2 here when Nightbane goes into the air. He'll fire off these fire patches on the ground at an increasing rate, so you have to be very strict with your position here. And he'll spawn this Bone Curse guy, and Bone Curse is going to apply a stacking dot to everyone that lasts permanently. So we found that using heroism, all cooldowns here, and just burning through meant that we could pass this stage with only 4 stacks of the dot. We were pretty close to getting it on 3 stacks, however 4 stacks was pretty manageable. It's still a lot of damage, your healer has to really just do as much as they can, but this was definitely the best way for us. So when Nightbane lands, he retains all of his phase 1 abilities, however he also gains a fear, and you can't do anything about this fear. you just kind of have to take it. You don't move very quickly. However, Nightbane's damage is very high, so if you see a fear coming as a tank, you probably want to pop a cooldown. Just make sure you're not dying to the fear. Another ability he retains from phase 1, which I didn't touch on before, was this Reverberating Shadows. It's a simple matter of interrupting this. You can usually use 2 interrupters rotating to deal with it. If you don't interrupt it, it's heavy damage to the whole party. And given that the damage in this fight is already insane, if one of these casts goes through, you're probably dead. So overall, this guy is one of the more intense 5-man bosses you'll run into. It's a lot of damage, and there's a lot of mechanical things to look out for, especially the burning soul thing, because you want to make sure you're on low HP. If you're on full HP or even high HP, you're going to blow up your whole group. And this was a cause of a lot of early wipes for us until we just figured it out. Fortunately, when you kill him, one member of your party is guaranteed to get the Smoldering Ember Wyrm mount, and it's a really nice one. So hopefully if you went through all this trouble, then you're the lucky guy who gets the mount, and you can go show off in Dalaran, and you can have people whispering, you're like, oh my god, where's that mount from? And you'll just feel really good about yourself generally. So thanks for watching, and good luck if you attempt to get this speedrun a go, and then good luck on the subsequent Nightbane boss, as he's a pretty tough one.
Your lifeblood is my weapon.
We got it.
Dead.
Nice.
Ooh, I got it!
I got some really nice robes.
Woohoo! Let's go! That's
Let's
awesome.
go, baby!